Hello fellow Eula Sims and fellow believers, welcome to a video where I'm going to be talking about is Eula worth it to summon with your hard-earned Primogems. Because after using Eula for quite a while, I feel like I have a definitive answer to that question now. So first off in this video, I'm going to show you how Eula does in the current hardest content of the game, Abyss 412, and to put it simply, she just absolutely destroys Abyss 12 currently, just due to how much damage her ult does. That's not damage that you can see immediately very quickly, and also when Eula does not have her ult up, she still has her normal attacks that are doing around 10k to 16k on each hit, which is absolutely nuts considering Primordial Bishop is an enemy that has 50% physical resistance. So its resistance to physical is really high, which means we should not be doing that much damage. But as you can see here, we actually cleared Chamber 1 first half in under a minute with 0 effort. So you can already see how strong Eula is. It gets even better as we go on with this footage. And also I use Hu Tao specifically here in the second team as well, because I want a good comparison. Because currently based on the map, Eula is one of the current best single target DPS characters in the game. She's right up there with Hu Tao in terms of DPS, just because her ult is so silly, and her normal attacks do a absolute crap ton of damage. And by the way, the Eula that you see in this footage is running 2 set Bloodstain and 2 set Pale Flame, because I do not have a good 4 set Pale Flame just yet. And she's currently C0 with her talent levels at level 8, 6, and 9. And by the way, currently these are my Eula stats. She currently has 20,800 HP and 864 defense, and 2,691 attack. She has 42.3% crit rate and 186% crit damage, 113% energy recharge. I would love for it to be higher, but sadly my artifact luck is not there, and 108% physical damage bonus. The weapon I'm using is Wolf's Gravestone because I don't have anything else. If I could choose a weapon, I would choose either her new weapon or Skyward Pride, because Skyward Pride's energy recharge is going to allow Eula to do her ult 2 times very easily. Which you already saw how strong one ult is. If she's able to pull off 2 ults, basically everything in Abyss 12 is dead. Alright, so 12-2. I'll kind of skip floor 12-2 since there's not really much in 12-2. And it's mostly skippable because it's just a bunch of small enemies. I also changed my team here. I took out Fischl temporarily for Sucrose because I need to bring in the little bats. And since these guys don't really do that much of a good job of showcasing Eula, other than this really nice 290,000 damage on her ult. I think Superconduct was active because there's Electro Aura on 12-2. But it's basically just Superconduct only and nothing else. Since all I have is Cryo Resonance and then 2 Anemos, which do not boost physical, so that's also really cool. And yep, let's just skip 12-2 and go straight into 12-3, where most people actually struggle. Alright, now 12-3. So 12-3, these Abyss Selectors are really annoying. So let's see how Eula actually manages to deal with them. Because most people struggle here in Abyss 12-3. Because these Abyss Selectors are quite tanky and not very easy to actually beat. So here we're gonna do a Eula ult, and let's see. Let's see how much she does. And there we go, 270k damage on the Electors. One of them is almost dead, and the other one is right there for the shield. As you can see, one of them's already gonna be on the shield. There we go. And then this one here is gonna go to the shield soon. This is a necessary sacrifice, trust me. Totally not because I blundered or anything, but I'd say Eula has shown what she can do here. Here I'm just gonna use Ganyu to finish off. She's see, it was a necessary sacrifice. Trust me. But yeah, that's what Eula can do against the Abyss Lecter. So if you have problems with the Abyss Lecter, just know that Eula does absolutely insane damage against them. They just get melted in the first couple of seconds. And just like that, Abyss Lecter is done. Abyss Lecter is done. And that's basically my 9-star run involving Eula. Here, this part was also 9-star. There's nothing special about it. It's just Hu Tao being Hu Tao. So, yep. I'll just kind of skip through this to the end as well. And there, 9-star, Abyss 12 clear. Now, if you were to ask me for my opinion, with Eula, this has been the easiest 9-star of this certain Abyss that I've done so far. Because most of my other runs take like 20 plus runs to actually complete, whereas this was more of like a second, third try. So that's why the runs are a little sloppy. But I think it showed well enough how good Eula's ult and Eula's damage is in Abyss. Also, by the way, before I get into the pros and cons of Eula, I just want to say real quick that some people are going to say that Eula has caveats, since apparently the term caveats has been very popular in the Genshin community recently, and most of the time it's absolute nonsense. Because what certain people are calling caveats are basically just things that you take like 2 minutes to remember and then you're done. And I know a lot of people are gonna say that Eula's ult has a lot of caveats, but I'm just gonna say this right now that it doesn't. It's actually not that hard of an ult. There are 2 main ways to get stacks with Eula's ult. The first and most consistent way, which I usually do, is this. I go in Abyss, and then I press E first, and then I ult. I do E first here to get a Grim Heart stack. And now you do an entire attack chain, you dash cancel 1, 2, and then you hold E. And that's how you get the maximum amount of damage from your ult. Pretty simple. So the order basically is just you do an E before your ult, and then you do the ult immediately after your E, and then you keep attacking until her sequence is complete. And then once you put in 2 more normal attacks, you do hold E, and then it will be right on time on when the ult explodes. This method will only give you 10 stacks, but overall it is the best DPS cycle based on what I calculated, because in this sequence you're also getting the 20 to 25% resistance decrease on the hold E. And you're also proccing Eula's passive, where if you do hold E, then there's also a sword that actually comes and does a ton of damage. If you want the maximum amount of stacks, then what you do is you E first before the ult, and then you just spam normal attacks. This is how you're going to get the maximum amount of stacks, and doing it in this way, you'll get around 13 to 14. 14 if your hit lag is really good. But for most people, it'll be 13, especially people like me who have really bad ping. So you get an extra 3 stacks this way, but you do not get some of the extra benefits from the order that I showed before. This passive is exactly why that's the case, by the way. Why the previous order does actually end up doing more DPS than the order that gains the most stacks possible by just normal attacking. So now let's talk about Eula's pros and cons. I'm going to go into the pros first, and there are 4 pros in total that I want to summarize real quick. Okay, so her first pro is that she's easily one of the hardest hitting single target characters in the game. If you do the math, it's not even close. Other than characters such as Hu Tao and Ganyu, no other character is even close to Eula when it comes to damage. Especially in Abyss, where you can actually charge your ult before you go in a specific chamber. So you always have one Eula ult ready, which, as you saw in Abyss, it absolutely destroys the enemy's HP. And her ult is basically like the equivalent of a Mona / Child ult, just due to how strong it is. So if you're lacking in DPS for one of your 2 teams, because you need 2 teams for Abyss, then I highly recommend Eula, because she's easily one of the best DPSs in the game right now. And in some cases, she is the absolute best because she can clear Abyss even faster than Hu Tao and Ganyu. The stronger your overall artifacts and account gets. Because Eula scales extremely well because her ult is ridiculous. The second big pro with her is that Eula is actually really free to play friendly, which is really good considering how good she is. Because Eula is amazing, Hu Tao is also amazing. However, to really get Hu Tao's power, you're gonna need Staff of Homa because Staff of Homa is extremely broken. I mean, don't get me wrong, Hu Tao is still extremely broken, but it's Staff of Homa that brings her to an insane amount. 5-star weapons for Eula also matter a lot as well, but not as much as other characters as Hu Tao. Because for spears, there really aren't any good 4-star spears except Lithic Spear. But for Eula, you have many great options, specifically Snow Tomb Star Silver for free to play. Because the passive is really nice extra damage, since Eula's ATK is super high, and physical damage bonus really goes a long way with her. Because although Eula already has very high physical damage bonus, it's still better than every other substat in the game, other than crit rate and crit damage for weapon substats. Because it scales much better than something like attack percent, even though attack percent is also actually pretty good on Eula as well, due to Eula's insanely high base ATK. Because ATK percentage multiplies with the white ATK. And Eula's base attack is actually the second highest in the game, at 342, only behind Xiao. So unlike other characters, she already has two amazingly good options. You also have the Black Cliff Claymores, which aren't that necessary in my opinion, since Snow Tomb Star Silver actually can perform really well, to the point where it can even beat Black Cliff Slasher in some cases. I have a video where I did some math behind Eula's weapons. I'll put it in the card at the top right, you can check that out. And as for 5-star weapons, every single 5-star Claymore works on her greatly. I actually prefer Skyward Pride the most. However, I do not have Skyward Pride, sadly. I only have Wolf's Gravestone, so that's what I'm using on her. And by the way, her new Claymore is not that necessary if you already have a 5-star Claymore, since the gap between those isn't that much. And the attack speed won't actually help you get more stacks unless you have pretty good ping. How do I know this? I don't have the weapon, but I basically used Gene C2, which has the same attack speed bonus. Although lower by 1%, it's basically the same thing. And I still got the same 13-14 stacks. Although instead of 13 I get 14 very often in terms of maximum stacks. And with the optimal rotation, if you have the new Claymore, you can actually do 3 hits instead of 2 hits before you do a hold E to get 11 stacks in total. And yep, that's why Eula is also free to play friendly. And unlike other elements, which is also something really interesting with physical, is that other elements have only 15% damage bonus on their sets, and Eula has this ridiculousness where she can get 50% physical damage or 4-set Pale Flame, which gives 50% physical damage bonus and an extra 18% attack on top of that. This is also why Eula mathematically comes out to be extremely good in terms of DPS, because her artifact set bonuses are just better than other characters, because usually other characters have sets like this, which is 15% of whatever damage bonus they have, and Noblesse, which is an extra 20%. So it actually turns out to be around 30% to lower extra DPS depending on how strong their ult is. It's not 35% damage bonus, since Noblesse Oblige only buffs the ult, not any other thing. So it's not a straight 35%, it's usually 30% or lower. And yep, Eula's just really free to play friendly because she has an amazing free to play weapon for her. Her artifact set bonuses are absolutely insane, where it gives you 50% damage bonus, which is basically unheard of for any other character that's not physical. And her talents scale extremely well, just because her modifiers are so ridiculously high that she'll do damage regardless of what stats you have. And of course, her constellations is 0 because I don't get constellations. The third pro is that she's a Claymore user, and as a Claymore user, that actually attacks faster than most other Claymore characters, which is also a really nice thing about Eula. Being a Claymore user, she's able to destroy shield, which isn't as necessary nowadays since there's overloaded reactions that kill shield faster, and you can just use the correct element to kill the shield faster in the first place. But let's say you don't have that option in your team, then Eula can also serve the option of destroying shields as well. Because claymores can destroy shields generally. Even though it's not that fast, she will destroy them. And lastly, my fourth pro is that Eula is really cute. Anyways, moving on to cons. So this con will be weird, especially after hearing my third pro, because one of her cons is that she is a claymore user. Now, claymore users have this nice ability where they can go through the shields, but claymore characters are slow. And even though Eula does attack much faster than other claymore characters, it's still on the slow side. And to be honest with you, this exact con is why I do not play claymore characters anymore. But Eula is the one exception, of course, since her speed is tolerable enough for me. And her damage is ridiculous. But yeah, the reason I think that's actually such a big con is that when you're attacking slow like this, and the enemies attack you really fast, you can't actually attack them. You have to dodge. And what ends up happening is you end up getting in way less hits because you simply can't attack in time before you have to dodge. Which is actually why the only two Claymore characters that I currently actually enjoy are Eula and Beidou, because Beidou you can counter instead of dodging. And why I usually dislike other Claymore main DPSs, because they're way too slow, so you cannot get in that many actual hits in. And her second con is that while she will be actually really good in the early game and mid game, she doesn't shine as much until you put in appropriate investment in her. Although you do not need that much since she scales really well, you just need her to be level 80 with talent level 6 or above. That's all you need for Eula to shine like crazy. And as for the weapon, again, you can just use Snow Tombed, and you would be very close to a Eula with a Serpent Spine or 5-star weapon. Because the Snow Tombed Star Silver is a really good weapon, especially for Eula. And before some of you say that level 80 characters are a heavy investment, no they are not. How can I say this? Because I was a free-to-play player myself for the first 3 months of the game. And any free-to-play player who does not spread out their resources extremely thin can actually get a character up to level 80 within their first month of play. I can say this because I was a free-to-play that got my Gene to level 80 within the first month of play without any problems. And the rest of my team were also level 40 to 50s. Which, again, for your first month of playing, you won't be that high world level, so it's easily more than enough. And even now, you don't really need to level up support characters past level 60 or 70. And you really only need to invest in your main DPSs. And since Eula is a main DPS, you're going to invest in her anyway, because you need to invest in a main DPS. If you do not invest in a main DPS, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Because Genshin Impact does not give you that many resources, but it gives you more than enough to get a couple level 90 main DPSs, like two or three main DPSs to level 90, just by playing for a couple of months, which Genshin has been out for like 7 months or something now, so it's actually very easy for most people. So again, this isn't really much of a con, since if you're playing Genshin Impact, you are going to get your main DPSs to level 90, 80 or 90 anyway. Which if you're going to, then why not do it on Eula, who's currently one of the best DPSs in the game. So if you hear this con where they say a character is bad because they require too much investment, like from certain YouTubers, then it's pretty obvious that they have no idea how many resources free-to-play actually get, and you have more than enough resources to get multiple characters to level 80 as a free-to-play, especially if you've been playing since last year, which most of you probably have. If you have not, you only need to get Eula to level 80, and that's very easily achievable in your first month of play, as long as you play enough. And now her third con, which is actually a valid con, is that her ult takes a very, very long time to charge. Because her ult cost is 80, which is extremely high. Now her ult cost is really high, which is an actual con, similar to Xiao. However, there's actually something very different with her and Xiao. Because unlike Xiao, her ult in one shot is going to delete over half of the enemy's HP. Whereas Xiao, for you to actually get that, your Xiao needs to be 5-star weapon, almost ideal artifact substats, because Xiao doesn't have the amazing scaling that Eula does. And also, one of Eula's saving graces is that while her ult is extremely expensive, her normal attacks actually do a ton of damage, and so do her E. So does her E, because their scaling is ridiculously high. Like these modifiers are ridiculous. Her E, 205%, 344%, and then there's the resistance decrease, of course, and then the normal attacks are really insane. Like as you can see at level 8, first hit is 153%, and then the fifth hit is 245.6%, which is pretty nuts. So the con is actually not that bad either. Although it is a con if you want to use Eula's ult multiple times. Although really, as you saw in the Abyss gameplay, you only need to use Eula twice because most enemies are going to already be below half health or at half health once Eula does her ult, because she's so ridiculously strong. And yep, that's basically Eula's pros and cons. So to summarize my conclusion, Eula is an extremely good character if you're really lacking a DPS currently, because she's easily one of the best DPSs in the game, right up there with Hu Tao and Ganyu. And you could even pair her up with Ganyu like how I did in the gameplay, although I don't really recommend it. I just did that because I needed Ganyu's ult for the Abyss Lectors. And now, should you pull for Eula? If you do not already have two teams that have DPSs of either Hu Tao, Ganyu, Xiao, or Klee, then definitely pull for Eula. Because aside from these four characters, the other 5-star DPSs don't really keep up with the meta as much anymore, and Eula outscales them by a crap ton. But the 4 5-star DPSs that I just mentioned, if you do have them, like for example, if you have a Xiao or a Klee, Eula does better than those two pretty easily in terms of damage. Although it's not that drastic to where you would to where it's absolutely necessary to change to Eula, because those two can hold their own very very well. But let's say you already have two teams and each team is a Klee Xiao, or you have a team with Hu Tao or Ganyu, then Eula isn't as necessary, and I would say in that case your best bet would actually be to skip for characters such as Kazuha, who are actually going to buff your current existing DPSs to the level of Eula's ult. And also I say this because Kazuha is going to support your team way more, and if you already have these main DPSs, it'll be a bit hard to fit in Eula without completely replacing them, because most of the current main characters kind of want their own teams. Although you could easily fit Eula in like a Ganyu team or Hu Tao team or even Klee team, but you'd be better off with a support character in that position, such as Kazuha, who can not only buff them to do tons of damage, but also do a ton of damage himself. Kazuha is not going to do damage like Eula, of course, but he's going to support the entire team, which overall will actually be more beneficial for you. So yeah, that's my answer to the question of should you summon for Eula. Again, it just depends on what you have. But hopefully I've explained and narrowed it down enough for you guys to decide, and I'm sorry this video is really late, and I know that probably a lot of you have already summoned, which would make this video redundant, but I mean, there's like 15 days left, so I'm gonna be a bit optimistic here, guys, okay? I was a bit busy during the week, so I apologize for being so late. And yeah, hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video whenever that comes out.